So, with episodes 31 and 32 of the Thousand Year Blood War arc anime now behind us, Ichigo's gang and the Gotei 13 have officially made it to Varvelt, the site of the final showdown. The previous two episodes, Against the Judgment and The Holy Newborn, featured a coming together of characters from all corners of the Bleach universe, with everyone pretty well aware of the fact that if Yhwach should succeed in his goal of creating a brand new world, and he is very close right now, everything they know and love will be sacrificed in the process. It's a dire, desperate hour for sure, but the scale of the threat also encourages a lot of familiar faces out of the woodwork at the same time. While the manga did indeed bring back a number of lost but not forgotten characters in preparation for the final battle, the anime goes another step further entirely, resurrecting many old faces that we'd thought long lost to time, or at least past story arcs gone by, and summons them to the grandest stage of all. In the anime, with the second invasion now over, Kyoraku calls upon the surviving Gotei 13 officers to regroup for one last push, asking to borrow their Reiatsu in order to help build the divine gateway to the royal palace. The setup is essentially the same in the source material, albeit on a much smaller scale. There, along with Mayuri's Reiatsu amplifier, the sheer power of the gathered captain-class characters is enough to get the job done. But here in the anime, the full force of the entire Gotei 13 is needed. And the officers come out in droves to help, bringing with them many surprising deep cuts from Bleach lore as cameos. At the same time, Ichigo and the others need to find a way back into the royal palace, and Yoruichi reveals just who has been helping them from within the shadows all this time. These last two episodes have reintroduced so many characters, and that's what we're here to look at today. Today's video for you, while I continue to work on the review this week, is designed to be a quick guide to every single cameo appearance from both episodes 31 and 32. Every character, Shinigami or otherwise, that we haven't seen in quite some time, who makes their reappearance here either in a big way or a little way to help prepare for the ascension to the royal palace, or to help Ichigo and the others with their own invasion scheme. There are quite a few faces to go through here, so let's take a look at everyone who came to aid the war effort, whether at Kyoraku's calling or to help Ichigo. This is the end of the world of Bleach as we know it, but the characters we are so familiar with, and some that we're not, aren't going to go down without a fight. Right, let's take a look at everyone that showed up then when the world needed them the most. Before we get started on the video, guys, there will be some spoilers for the remainder of the Thousand Year Blood War arc in the video to come, and if you enjoyed the video today, if you like what you saw and you want to see more from me and the channel, then make sure to hit the subscribe button down below, as it really does help and I really do appreciate the support. First on our list is, of course, the 6th Espada, and once one of Ichigo's most heinous enemies, perhaps the most famous character to be reintroduced here in the Thousand Year Blood War arc, and it's, of course, Grimmjow. Now, Grimmjow's long-awaited reappearance here in episodes 31 and 32 isn't a big surprise. In fact, he's been working from within the shadows throughout the Thousand Year Blood War arc so far, with both the manga and the anime giving us the occasional glimpse of the Rancor from time to time, teasing the fact that of the returning characters, Grimmjow was clearly the one people wanted to see the most. During the first invasion, Grimmjow kills the Vandenrijk's hunting captain and sternritter Jay the Jail, Kirige Opie, with a sneak attack from behind, before working alongside Kisuke, Orihime, Chad, and a few others, training in Waco Mundo after coming to some kind of a nebulous and, still to this day, unspecified agreement with Kisuke, though it likely involves getting a chance to fight Ichigo again one day. That being said, despite a continued presence in the final arc until his big reintroduction, it has been a very very long time since we last saw Grimmjow properly, by which I mean since we last saw his face, to the point where many fans at one time debated over whether or not he was even still alive, something Grimmjow himself seems to reference here in episode 32. In the manga, Grimmjow's face was last seen in chapter 287, after Ichigo defends his fallen foe from Neutra, who had just arrived to continue the battle and poach Grimmjow's prey. This shot of Grimmjow as he lies in the sand was the last we saw of him until chapter 500, many, many years later, when his sword was shown after killing Kirige, though at that point we weren't certain it was him. In chapter 518, however, Grimmjow's return was made fairly explicit, though his face was still hidden, and for whatever reason, no one called him by his name. In chapter 544, Grimmjow is briefly visible behind Chad, hidden within the shadows of a cave, but we don't see his face again until chapter 624, a full 337 chapters after his last true appearance. That's an incredibly long time, an exhaustingly long time, to be honest. Aizen doesn't even spend that many chapters in prison. The anime makes Grimmjow's return a little more obvious, where he makes 2 additional appearances in episode 14, his face barely concealed by a hood. While Grimmjow's return is a big deal, he makes it clear to Ichigo that he isn't on his side. Instead, his motive for helping out is fairly simple. If Yhwach destroys Hueco Mundo, then there won't be anywhere left for him to kill Ichigo one day. Up next, we have another returning Espada, or a former Espada at least. Or perhaps they're all technically former Espada now? Either way, it's the former third Espada, Neliel. Returning in episode 32, Neliel, once again in her adult form, reveals that Kisuke developed a bracelet for her that lets her transform between her child and adult forms at will. But wait, speaking of child Nell, it hasn't actually been that long since we last saw her, right? That's absolutely true. Child Nell returns at the start of the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, first appearing in chapter 485, or episode 2, when she falls from the sky, begging Ichigo to help Hueco Mundo. Since then, she's made sporadic appearances throughout the 1,000-Year Blood War arc anime, including training alongside Pesce and Dondochaka for the big fight to come, and even being involved, in a sense, in the battle against Kirige, if you could really call it that. That being said, it's been an incredibly long time since we last saw adult Nell. Her final appearance in the manga was in chapter 296, before she unexpectedly reverted back to her child form, and we don't see her again until chapter 625, or episode 32, of the 1,000-Year Blood War arc. So a gap almost as long as Grimmjow's. Though actually she does appear in a flashback in chapter 313, which I suppose would mark her true final appearance. In her newest appearance, adult Nell warns Grimmjow about starting fights, saying that a 6th Espada couldn't possibly defeat a 3rd, though that just riles Grimmjow up even more. For our next returning character, we have the Fullbringer and former member of Execution, Riruka Dokugamine. Obsessed with all things cute, Riruka has the ability of Dollhouse, which allows her to move objects in and out of things that she finds cute. While Riruka was technically an antagonist in the Lost Agent arc, she always seemed to be the only member of Execution who felt guilty about their scheme, even going so far as to try and turn down a portion of Ichigo's stolen power. Riruka's last appearance was at the very end of the Lost Agent arc itself, chapter 479, when she disappears from sight in the final panel of the arc. Since then, we hadn't seen or heard from her at all, until she reappeared suddenly in chapter 625 alongside Nell to help Ichigo and the others reach the royal palace without being spotted by the enemy. In the manga, Chad notes in chapter 544 that everyone is here, which we now know included Riruka, but the anime again makes it a little more explicit, teasing a portion of Riruka herself in episode 14. Riruka's appearance in the arc is brief, but Kisuke uses her power of Dollhouse to take a Kyogoku, a pocket dimension of stable reishi capable of existing even within the abyss that is Garganta, and placing that Kyogoku into a box. Ichigo expressly thanks Riruka for going out of her way for them, as it must have been taxing moving something that she doesn't find cute. Now, admittedly, I do find this to be a little confusing, as it feels like there is some mixed messaging surrounding what Riruka's dollhouse can actually do. Does Riruka's dollhouse allow her to move items, any items, into objects that she finds cute, like the dollhouse from Ichigo's initial training session, or conversely, does it allow her to move items that she finds cute into any box? Because Ichigo thanks her for her efforts in moving the Kyogoku because it's far from cute, meaning it was hard on her to do so, meaning the object being moved is the thing that normally has to be cute. But I was initially under the impression that she could move anything into a box, so long as the box itself was cute. After all, isn't that why she sticks the cute dog face on the fish tank so that Ichigo can enter that for his second round of training? Either way, she comes through for them in a big way. However, we're not quite done with the Fullbringers just yet, as our next returning cameo character is Yukio Hansvorlburner, another former member of Execution, and another one who was an antagonist in the Lost Agent arc, except this time, unlike Riruka, he wasn't quite so guilt-ridden about his role in the scheme to steal Ichigo's powers. Also returning in episode 32 and chapter 625, Yukio hasn't been seen since the conclusion of the Lost Agent arc, with his final appearance being in chapter 478, one chapter prior to Riruka's last appearance. Though interestingly, when you think about it, talking about the Execution characters in particular, if you go off just the anime, just the episode count, it really hasn't been that long since we last saw them. Yukio's Fullbring Invaders Must Die gives him complete control over a digital pocket dimension. After Riruka succeeded in placing a Kyogoku inside a box, Yukio used his ability to modify the Kyogoku into something habitable, turning it into a room within a box and placing that on a set of rails that can exist within the Garganta. Essentially, Kyogoku is a space that can exist within the Garganta itself, where normally everything else can't. It's a pocket dimension which Yukio then transforms into the room and rails you see in the episode itself, allowing Ichigo and his friends to move completely undetected through the Garganta itself, stealthily right back to the throne room of the palace. Despite Yukio coming to their aid, however, he has no interest in getting involved in the battle itself. At the very least, though, he must realise the threat Yhwach poses to the human world, or else presumably he wouldn't have come. Moving on, during my live reaction of episode 32, as the gathered Shinigami was shown off in full, I missed someone. I thought that there was one notable exception, someone that, as shown in the manga, should be here by now. Hanataro, who ends up travelling to the royal palace along with everyone else. And yet, despite the coming together of the Gotei 13 in these new scenes, we hadn't seen him at all yet. Except, we do see him. In a blink and you'll miss it shot, just like I did on my first watch of the Shinigami as they charge their spirit orbs with Reryoku, Hanataro is in fact right here. Neither episode 31 nor 32 have focused on him even once, but he is present. Of course, Hanataro plays a large role in the Soul Society arc before showing up sporadically in both the Arrancar and Thousand Year Blood War arcs, and he even gets mentioned in The Lost Agent. In that sense, it would have been a shame if the anime had decided to cut him, so I'm glad then that he's still around for the big finale. Perhaps true to form, Hanataro has in fact arrived at the Shinigami stronghold as of episode 32, but he hasn't been paid any attention at all. Right, moving on now to the anime-only cameo appearances, and we're kicking things off with a very welcome surprise. Mashiro Kuna, the super vice captain of the 9th Division. Now, I'm not a particularly big fan of Mashiro or anything like that. I think she's a fine character, but the reason I'm so happy to see her is that her surprise appearance here signifies the anime is closing yet another gaping hole in the manga version of the Thousand Year Blood War arc. Originally, Mashiro was last seen in chapter 538, where she's revealed to have rejoined the Gotei 13 in the wake of the battle against Aizen. Here, she prepares to fight Hisagi on Kensei's orders, hoping to help Hisagi achieve bankai in a brutal fashion. Mashiro is unique too in that she's the only current Gotei 13 Vizard to actually use her mask in this arc. If the speculation that the Vizard were banned from using their masks inside the Serete is true, then she's likely doing so because they are currently in the Rukongai for Hisagi's training. Anyway, despite showing up for Hisagi's training out of the blue, Mashiro was then never seen again. She never reappeared in the second Quincy invasion, she never returned to help build the gate, and she never travelled to Varvelt. She completely disappeared from the story entirely. It was an obvious and pretty blatant case of Kubo forgetting about a character, so to see Mashiro here is wonderful and really helps to clear that up. The question now is, will she get the chance to actually do anything? Sure, she's helped build the gate, which is nice, but will she, and the other Vizard by extension, be given better treatment here than they were in the manga? Well, I guess by virtue of being in episodes 31 and 32, Mashiro's already been given better treatment, so what more can you ask for? Our next anime-only cameo is Kurumadani Zennosuke, who appears out of nowhere in episode 31 when Kyoraku summons the surviving officers to the stronghold. Zennosuke has had a somewhat fleeting role in the story of Bleach, first appearing in the Rankar arc as the Shinigami officially in charge of the jurisdiction of Karakura Town. His role kind of culminates with him actually facing off against Aizen himself during the final battle of the arc. Wait, what? Yes, that did actually happen. Zennosuke is then seen in the very first chapter of the Thousand Year Blood War arc, chapter 480, as well as episode 1, where he transitions out of that role, handing patrol duties of the town over to rookie officers Shino and Yuki. This was his final appearance in the story, until now. Here, Zennosuke offers a helping hand to an injured Shinigami, even walking the man through the Quincy city despite his own injuries, the two of them arriving at the Gotei 13 stronghold. Later, Zennosuke helps to build the gate to the royal palace, even becoming shocked when they don't seem to have enough power. In the anime here, it is revealed that Zennosuke is the 10th seat of his division, and I can't really remember if that was actually revealed prior to this or not. I don't think it was. Certainly not in the canon story itself. Anyway, speaking of Shino and Yuki, this duo of novice Shinigami from the 13th Division are the next pair of cameos on our list. As Kyoraku summons the Gotei 13, we see the two of them making their way through the icy city. Yuki appears to be injured and is being helped along by Shino. However, upon hearing their orders, Yuki defiantly asks to be allowed to walk on his own, surprising Shino. The two of them eventually arrive at the gathering and also help to charge spirit orbs, building the gate to the royal palace. Shino and Yuki are both first introduced in chapter 480, the first chapter of the Thousand Year Blood War arc. It felt like Kubo was putting a lot of emphasis on Yuki in particular, as though he were trying to depict him as Ichigo's successor or protege, but nothing really came of that. Instead, they are briefly involved in the first Quincy invasion, with Yuki's final appearance coming in chapter 500 when he hears that Ichigo is making his way to the battleground. Next up is perhaps the most surprising cameo of the bunch, at least in my opinion. As Kyoraku's orders are heard throughout the destroyed Serete, we see none other than Rikichi listening in on the phone. This cameo is one of the absolute deepest cuts of the bunch. Rikichi is a member of the 6th Division who plays a small but significant role in the Soul Society arc, most famous for being a huge fan of Renji. Rikichi looks up to Renji so much so that he even copied his eyebrow tattoos, getting one of his own in the Vice Captain's honour. Rikichi's final appearance in the story is all the way back in chapter 149, where initially he confesses to finding it unbelievable that his hero Renji would turn his sword against his fellow officers during the civil war that breaks out in the Soul Society arc. However, after some soul searching, Rikichi remembers why he joined the Gotei 13. It was because of Renji, and he believes that whatever Renji is fighting for, it must be the right thing. As a result, he presents Renji with a new Shihakusho and headband after his was destroyed in his battle with Byakuya. To be honest, I was always a little surprised that Rikichi never reappeared in any form ever again, so it's great to see him here. In episode 32, we also see him helping to charge a spirit orb along with the other officers. Up next we have Yasuchika Iemura, the 3rd seat of the 4th Division. While Iemura does play a small but fairly consistent role throughout the story of Bleach, he disappears early into the 1000-Year Blood War arc. His final appearance is in chapter 515, where he's seen directing relief squads in the immediate aftermath of the first Quincy invasion. Here, though, he is seen in the lineup of Shinigami who listened to Kyoraku's war speech in episode 31 before he takes a spirit orb and helps to charge the gate to the royal palace in the following episode. Like most of the other cameo appearances, Iemura is left behind as the rest of the Gotei 13 make their way towards Varvelt. I know that Iemura doesn't travel up to the palace in the manga either, obviously, but neither does Mashiro, and yet she's going up. Leaving behind a very capable healer like Iemura feels like a potentially odd choice to me. And to be honest, if Kyone and Sentaro are allowed to go up to the royal palace for the final showdown, I kind of feel like that opens the floodgates to any named character really being worthy of that honour. Our penultimate cameo appearance is Makizo Aramaki, otherwise known by his nickname Maki-Maki, given to him by Yachiru. A member of the 11th Division, Maki-Maki plays a fairly large role in the Soul Society arc before completely disappearing from the story entirely. Similarly to Rikichi, I suppose, except Maki-Maki's role is definitely larger than Rikichi's overall. Orihime goes so far as to save Maki-Maki's life when they're discovered by Mayuri, who attempts to kill both her and Uryu with his explosive subordinates. Maki-Maki's final appearance in the story was in chapter 167, in the wake of Ichigo defeating Byakuya. As Ichigo wonders who he is, Maki-Maki simply tells Ichigo to ignore him. And in what is perhaps a somewhat meta moment, Ichigo does ignore him, and Maki-Maki subsequently vanishes from the story forever. That's the power of the main character ignoring you, apparently. However, Maki-Maki does make a cameo appearance earlier in the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime. In episode 20, when Kenpachi battles Gremmy, Maki-Maki is among the 11th Division officers cheering him on during the fight. And this in itself is actually a reference to a cameo from within the manga, though not from the serialized chapter release. Maki-Maki appears as an omake sketch in volume 64, appearing at the end of chapter 574. Here in the anime, in episode 31, he appears alongside Mashiro and helps to build the Reishi Gate. And finally, what I believe is our final cameo appearance comes from none other than Chad's strongest opponent, Tatsufasa Enjoji, the 3rd seat of the 8th Division. Tatsufasa stood in Chad's way during the Soul Society arc and attempted to intimidate him by flailing his sword around wildly, only to be taken out in a single punch all the way back in chapter 105. Now, like Maki-Maki, however, Tatsufasa does actually make a cameo appearance earlier in the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime. He appears briefly in episode 2 as part of the group of Shinigami mourners present at Sasakibe's funeral. Here in episode 32, he makes a blink and you'll miss it appearance among the officers present to help charge the gate to the royal palace. So, there you have it. I believe those are all the cameo appearances among the characters that appeared in episode 31 and 32 of the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime. As you can see, that's a lot of familiar faces, some very recognisable, others a little less so. There are a couple of pretty deep cuts here among the characters, that's for sure. But that doesn't mean absolutely everyone is here. In fact, there are some fairly prominent characters still unaccounted for that I think should possibly have been here, including one that's not so prominent. And we'll start there. Toshinori Umesada is an officer from the 9th Division who appears in the Soul Society arc. He is the man who accosts both Orihime and Uryu. Now, interestingly, in the manga, in chapter 511, Toshinori Umesada is seen facing off against the Soldat when they first arrive in the Serete, and he is seemingly killed by one as they stab him through the gut. However, Toshinori was removed from this moment in the anime, replaced by an unknown Shinigami officer. So, presumably, he is still alive. I feel like he could have possibly made a return here, but alas, it wasn't meant to be. Anyway, moving on to the more prominent characters, I've already talked about Komamura and Iba, who we know are currently making their way through the battlefield. If all of these disparate Shinigami were able to make it to the lab via Kyoraku's orders, then I'm not sure why these two couldn't, and it definitely makes me wonder where they are. The strangest part about the two leaders of the 7th Division is that they haven't been forgotten completely. The anime has actually given us a couple of new scenes featuring Komamura and Iba, so they're out there somewhere. Another duo whose missing in action status I can forgive a little more easily is Rose and Kensei. Both captains were zombified by Giselle, and both were rescued by Mayuri, along with Hitsugaya and Matsumoto. Now, Hitsugaya and Matsumoto weren't present in these episodes either, so that's fair enough, but considering they are both de-zombified in time for the battle in Varvelt, I want to hope that Rose and Kensei will be too, though I have my doubts. Perhaps, though, the biggest missed opportunity, in my opinion, comes in the form of Kukaku Shiba and Jidanbo. Much like in the manga, Jidanbo remains a loose end. We have no idea what became of him after he was possessed in the first invasion. Meanwhile, again, much like in the manga, we haven't seen Kukaku since she helped Ichigo and the Zero Division return to the palace, which is especially weird considering the huge role that Ganju currently enjoys. This would have been an awesome opportunity to include them both, confirming Jidanbo's fate while getting Kukaku involved in a meaningful way. Considering she never reappears in the 1000-Year Blood War arc after chapter 518, well, I hope the anime is cooking up something for her, but we'll have to wait and see. Anyway guys, that is it for today's video. That is a lowdown, a guide to every returning cameo character from the 1000-Year Blood War arc episodes 31 and 32. At least, I hope that's all of them. Maybe I forgot someone. Do let me know down in the comments below. Which of these returning characters were you the absolute happiest to see, and which were you the most surprised to see as well? And are there any further cameo characters you think we might see in the future that could realistically still happen? I'd love to hear all of your thoughts down in the comments below. Alright guys, but again, that's it from me. As always, I want to end the video by saying a massive thank you and giving a huge shout out to my wonderful supporters over on Patreon, without who I simply wouldn't be able to do this. If you enjoy what I do here over on YouTube and you want to help support me that extra step further, then thank you so very much by supporting me at the $1 tier a month. Over on Patreon, you can get your name in the credits of every single video just like this, and at the $2 tier or higher, you can enjoy all of my videos absolutely free of baked-in YouTube ads. Alright everyone, thank you again so very much for watching. I hope you got something of value from this video. Until next time, I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then.